the Gold Goats and Guns podcast for October 30th, 2025. My name is Tom Luongo. We've got a lot to talk about. And this is going to be a really fun one because this is one of those episodes, and this is episode 235, where I get to talk with an old friend in a new format. I've never had my friend Halsey English on the show. And Halsey and I have been doing this on and off for 8 years. And to be honest with you, Halsey is one of those guys that a lot of you probably don't know because it's been a long time since then, that he was one of the guys early on that gave me, a hand up, helping to publish my work and everything else. And we've just been friends on and off ever since. So Halsey, how are you, man? How you been?
I am doing fantastic. I am doing really, really good.
Good.
Life is good. Weather's good. The country's good. I'm feeling very positive these days.
Good. And I know you've had a rough time of it of late and at the same time. So it's good to hear that, my friend. So I got you on this morning for a couple of reasons. And because now that we're a couple of weeks past the Trump Gaza deal, I think it's important now we do an honest postmortem, right? And this is your
Okay,
area of expertise in my
sure.
mind. And I can't really think of anybody who would be, better for this one in at least explaining why this is both good and, why this is good for Israel in the long run, why, all these things have occurred. So give me your, just start wherever you want with this one and explain it. Explain the why this is the beginnings of what you and I have always talked about as the grand bargain in the Middle East, I think. So let me, tell me if I'm wrong, if
It is the
necessary.
beginning of it in that when you look at the flare up that came between Israel and Hamas slash Qatar slash Saudi Arabia slash everywhere over the last few years, right? Ever since the 7th of October in 2023, what you saw was a remaking of the world order in the Middle East. But the difference being is that there was never a doubt that Israel was able to handle itself militarily if need be. There was a doubt whether the regimes that are connected to the various parts of Europe and the Middle East would ever allow them to live in peace. And what you saw was this grand axis of resistance, which was Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, and Hamas, basically completely disintegrate. And they've all been taken off the table for now. Iran is still an issue, but they're not even close to the issue they used to be. And how does it relate to the grand bargain in the Middle East? It relates to that Trump has seen the end goal, which is the end goal is to get the European meddling out of the Middle East because Europe because they don't have any influence anymore when it comes to finance. They have no influence anymore when it comes to military. So what they do is they create chaos. Now they've always done this, but they've always been able to back it up with something. Because Europe not being able to have any rock solid influence, they just take advantage of the chaos and try to offer some level of stability, while in the meantime still creating chaos. Now, this isn't unique to Israel. You saw this in Vietnam when the French basically started with the Vietnamese, called us in to help, and then left and started selling weapons to both sides. Right? So same thing. There's no difference in what's going on there now and what's been going on in history. But the big difference is that when push came to shove and Britain and France turned their backs on Israel and the US, the powers that be in Israel and the US turned their backs on Britain and France as well.
Mhm.
And that they stopped giving them influence. Britain and France decided to take up the reins and start demanding a Palestinian state in recognition of a Palestinian state. Netanyahu cut off, by all reports, intelligence and diplomatic support for Britain. So what you're seeing is not really a reordering of the Middle East away from the Arab powers. You're seeing the reordering of the Middle East away from Europe.
Yeah,
And
that's
Europe is being accepted for what it is, which is just a vassal state of Qatar and Iran and Syria and the different power, mostly Turkey as well.
mhm.
So the Brits and the French now are flailing as they have been for years, and they're going to be left to deal with their own problems. Like no one's coming to bail them out.
Right.
And that's the part no one's talking about, but it's the most important part of what's going on in the Middle East.
No, I would say that you and I've talked about it. I've talked about it a lot I've talked about it with my friend like Alex Craner, and I'm going to have Richard Poe on the podcast for next week as well because I want to go over a lot of
Awesome.
the historical stuff. I just haven't talked to Richard in a long time, and I actually apologized to him when I invited him on the show. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, it just kept slipping my mind. Um, but I think we have been trying to make these points for a very long time, and I think you're correct that it's funny. Like I say all this right, and earlier in the year, you and I were talking behind the scenes, and when I was going off, I'm thinking that Trump and Netanyahu were not in cahoots, not in that there was something going on there, and you kept saying to me, dude, they're absolutely working together. Like, what's wrong with you? How did you get this so wrong? And I'm like, you're better than this, and I was like, well, what I saw was actually and I still maintain that there's tension in that relationship, that there are continued attempts by Netanyahu to wriggle out from underneath whatever it is that Trump is demanding of him. I think everybody is trying to do that. I think that's what's going on with Erdogan in Turkey as well. You can see it with him. You can see it with Modi in India. They're all still like trying to be a man with a foot on two different islands, trying to decide who's going to win because they're being whispered to in both ears from both sides that no, you have to ally with the U.S. No, you have to ally with Europe. No, you have to ally with the U.S. And then they're being schmoozed from both sides. I still think that tension's on the table, which is part of the reason why I keep saying it's the beginning of the grand bargain in the Middle East. But that being said, I agree with you that in general that this is necessary. It was a necessary step to de-Eurify the region.
But the difference being is that it's everybody thinks they have Trump's number, right? And that Trump talks a good game, and when push comes to shove, he folds. The
Mhm.
thing is that that isn't Trump's game. That's never been Trump's game.
Mhm.
Trump talks a big game, but what he's saying is not necessarily what he wants. It's what he wants his enemies to perceive he wants. So they think the way to counter him is to talk really well and then just not give him what he wants. But so far, it seems that they've given him exactly what he wants on all angles. And it's when you see Erdogan doing this, Erdogan is a classic example, right? He talks out of both sides of his mouth. He wants Qatar and Hamas to know he's still on board. He wants Europe to know that they're still on a short leash, and he wants the U.S. to know that they're still an ally that can be counted on. I don't think Trump takes the history of the region into account at all. He's
Mhm.
more of a what have you done for me lately kind of person.
Sure.
And with Qatar, he sees that Qatar is allied with probably the worst aspects of our deep state,
Mhm.
right? That's where CENTCOM is. Like there's so many people that talk about it. Qatar is a nation of 300,000 people. It's
Right.
not really a country. It's just an oil field that we put this royal family in charge of.
Mhm.
And while that oil field loves to spread its influence with its money, it has more of a hold on Europe than it has on anywhere else because Europe has also had a hold on them. The
Mhm.
MI6, CIA, these have been the organizations that have primarily ruled what the Qataris do.
Mhm.
And Erdogan has held ship because Erdogan contains the gates to Europe.
Mhm.
When the Middle East sends its trash to Europe, it comes through Turkey, and Turkey's the one decides which kind of port is it going to leave from? Is it going to go to Greece? Is it going to go to Italy?
Mhm.
And where are these people going to wind up? Are they going to get in rafts and float over to Britain? So everyone thinks that they've got Trump's number and that if they just, give him, but then don't come through, that he's going to fold and just take what he can get. And Trump hasn't done that at all. And in
Mhm.
fact, they've played into his hands quite a bit. And
Give a couple of really concrete examples here because this is one of these things where you can say that stuff and then the obvious counter is yeah, but then he opened he held open Netanyahu's chair for him and blah 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 and everybody in Congress is owned by APAC and all the rest of this nonsense. No, like specifically like what has like do that work because this is really important.
Okay, so you bring up a couple points that are actually kind of interesting. Number one, he holds the chair out for everybody. That's
Right.
something like that's been completely debunked in terms of like, oh look, he even holds out Netanyahu's chair for him. He does that for everybody. It's called being polite,
Mm-hmm.
and people forget what being polite means. right? He did it for Erdogan, he did it for the Qataris, he did it
Mhm.
for the Brits. He's done it for everybody. But the most important part that when you look at it as to what Trump is doing is the energy that's needed to go to Europe because Europe can't heat itself. Europe can't provide energy for itself. It's bitten off this climate change disaster full force and decided that that was going to be what they used to control their own population, and it
Mhm.
didn't work. And now they can't get energy from anywhere without paying a premium for it.
Mhm.
So, with the chaos in the Middle East, there was kind of this hope that they would be able to form a peace deal with Iran and Israel, that they would be able to keep Qatar on their side. They'd be able to do all of these things and therefore purchase cheap energy from the Middle East. That hasn't happened at all. So the Qataris and the Iranians, they're still selling every drop they can to China and India because they have a much better appetite and are willing to pay more than the Europeans ever would.
Right.
They're not looking for any influence in the area. They're just looking for energy.
Mhm.
So Trump has basically made it so that Europe gets the majority of its energy from us.
Mhm.
And sometimes we use this weird convoluted back channel where it gets purchased from Russia, then it gets sold through three different sources, and then it gets eventually brought right back to Europe.
Mhm.
But Europe has not been able to solidify any kind of gains from what they've done in the Middle East.
Yeah,
In
no,
fact,
not at all.
it's hurt them even further.
I
So
so what I'll say, well, Dave, just to add some color to that, as far as the energy flows are concerned, it's very obvious that what was actually going on. There was there was an announcement from the Indians a couple of years ago. Look, de-dollarization is happening. We're going to settle all of our oil export trades in UAE dirham. You remember
mhm,
that? And
mhm.
that's how they were. So, and then I was having a Twitter, argument or discussion with a guy about my contention that the euro is being sidelined in international trade. He said, no, they've just moved a lot of um their trade settlement off of Swift, so it doesn't show up in the Swift data, but they have their own payment rails, and they're actually getting around the U.S. sanctions on Russian oil by using those payment channels to pay in euro, convert into UAE dirham, and buy the same oil from the Indians. Meaning that what has always been the liquidity token of the old forex network, which was the British pound, was being moved to the United Arab Emirates. Trump allowing Netanyahu to go in and blow up the friggin' Hamas leadership in Qatar, in my mind, was him saying, "Oh, by the way, you fuckers don't get to move your bolt hole from London, which you're liquidating, to the Middle East, to Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Doha, all that. Fuck off with that. Go back to Europe with that." And it's a
Right.
very important. It's not just the physical energy; it's the trade settlement of the energy and the forex market as well. So,
Well, that's because what you're talking about bucks conventional wisdom,
mhm.
but is actually one of the few things. And don't get me wrong, I don't believe they did this on purpose. I think they did this by mistake. That it's one of the few things that happened under Biden that actually wound up being a huge positive in the world
Mm.
and enabled the US to move in ways that it hasn't been able to in the past. Everyone always said that coming off the dollar standard for oil would be a disaster for the US, but it
Mm.
hasn't been a disaster for the US because all that did was what we used as an off ramp for our inflation by putting it into the dollar that was used for transactions was that it took that inflation, it moved it around the world. But if people weren't going to hold those dollars, they would just repatriate them back into the US.
Mhm.
So what you were wound up doing was giving China and Russia and everyone the opportunity to buy US farmland and buy real assets within the United States
Mhm.
that technically we didn't want them to have. And it just gave the United States back their currency, which
Mhm.
was inflating at a rate that was really high. So Biden, whenever I say Biden, understand I'm not talking about Joe Biden himself. He obviously he
The
checked
Biden
out long
junta.
before.
I like
Yeah,
the Biden
it's the
junta.
that's a good way to put it. The people that are behind Biden.
Mhm.
What they did was they gave us a new off ramp for our inflation because by being able to settle in all these different currencies, we were able to offer bonds that were purchased with foreign currencies as opposed to have to being purchased in dollars.
Mhm.
So now they were doing bond offerings all over the Middle East and all over the world that people were taking advantage of. And the foreign currency was being repatriated to here, which wasn't necessarily pegged to the same inflationary rates that we were.
Mhm.
So, and it made the Europeans take their genuinely very unstable euro and have to use transactions in the euro. And now the Europeans are trying to put the euro all over the world, and nobody wants it
Right.
because
No.
they
Yeah.
recognize its inherent instability.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you don't have a growing economy to counter your currency, which Europe doesn't have,
Right.
then what you have is baked in inflation that you're not giving anybody the incentive to take on. Like
Mhm.
people will buy an inflated dollar because they understand that A, the American economy is still growing, and B, that they can still use those dollars even if they're worth less than the day they bought them.
Mhm.
Whereas with the euro, there's no guarantee that you're ever going to be able to use them because there might not be any assets in Europe worth buying that anybody cares about, right?
Or that you can
So,
actually
like,
get, or that you can actually buy, because the Europeans are moving to put capital controls on everything. They're trying to keep capital
exactly.
flight from happening, and then they won't, and then they don't want the money coming back in, and they don't want the money flowing back out. They're putting up
Right.
capital controls in both directions, and all they're trying to export is their terrible regulatory environment to bring everybody down to their level of misery. And it's not
Hmm.
working because everybody's just looking at them going, well, that's nice, fuck off. The big thing
Right.
that this is here's the this is, I think everybody missed this point about when they were talking about how they were going to get their carbon tax through shipping done,
Hmm.
and Trump walked into the UN and with one tweet, and and Marco, and one speech by Marco Rubio, killed this tax and killed this thing. And apparently the Dutch were like, we were just going, the Americans have never been able to tell us what's going to happen in shipping. We've always controlled shipping, always, always, always.
Hmm.
So if we decide that there's going to be a carbon tax on on shipped goods into and out of Europe or around the world, we're just going to make that happen, and it's going to happen fait accompli. And Trump and Rubio blew it up in 48 hours. It's like one of the
Well,
most.
there's
It's one of those, like, this is like, it's sincere. Like, this is one of the greatest examples of American power we've ever
well,
seen.
you see more evidence of what you're talking about that just happened yesterday.
Okay.
He Bill Gates was
Mm-hmm.
summoned to a meeting with the White House. He
Yes.
went to the White House and immediately came out and announced that climate change wasn't as big a deal as he thought.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's huge
Yes.
because Bill Gates is like the private citizen that is connected to Europe and the climate change agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's used billions to push it. He understands the true nature of it. He understands that even if he were to believe that climate change is real, that the alarmism and the financial controls that are being instituted by climate change, that while they might have been beneficial to him and to others in the past, are no longer beneficial. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, that they're a hindrance, right? Like if you're going to invest in companies that make electric cars, you're going to make money, but you're not going to make money like you used to in the past because the CAFE standards are changing, because car manufacturers are moving back towards gasoline cars and just more efficient gasoline cars.
Mm-hmm.
Hybrid cars are starting to make more of a comeback, which are truly the clean way to actually do energy if you care
Agreed.
about that kind of thing.
Agreed.
And they also realize, and you're seeing this. I'm reading between the lines, and I think a lot of other people too are too. When Trump announced that he was going to start testing and upgrading our nuclear weapons again, what he was basically saying is he's going to authorize more nuclear plants to be built.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge hit to the climate change agenda because remember, they're just as against nuclear power as they are against, coal powered or gasoline powered power.
But
So
they're against energy. They actually just want to
exactly.
kill. Remember, this is a depopulation agenda. So what they're really against is people. Like, you're the carbon they want to
Exactly.
reduce. Like, you never forget that. So no, you're absolutely right. The whole Bill Gates thing was great. I was like, looked at it yesterday and I was like, oh, I tweeted about it yesterday and I was like, yeah, yeah. Like, and the interesting, it's interesting. I the Gates thing is massive. Like, why did he,
Hmm.
like, for weeks people were screaming, like, most of the typical, Trump is owned by the Jews crowd. Um screaming like, well, why did he have Bill Gates at Mar-a-Lago? Why did he do this? Why did he do that? I'm like, because you summon them to you and you let them know what the score is, and then you threaten their money, and you tell them like, this is like, dude, like everything is being set up and you can see it. Like the infrastructure is being set up to surround these people legally, to
Hmm.
attack, to take them all down in one fell swoop, with RICO charges domestically, because they've worked with foreign terrorist organizations and domestic terrorist organizations. It's all being laid out brick by brick, block by block, and that's why they're
Hmm.
all like. That's why they're all showing up in London this week. Like, why Obama? Why this one? Why that one? They're all showing up. They're all trying to figure out what to do. Like,
They're all trying to figure out what to do because, and this has been true for a long time as well, is that when you want to criticize someone, right, you
mm-hmm,
do it publicly. Because publicly, then you can see where the country is and where the population is on what you're
mm-hmm,
saying. It
right,
doesn't necessarily mean what you're saying is true, or what they call a trial balloon,
mm-hmm,
right? Like let's see what people really think about that. But
right,
when you want to talk to someone without a microphone and let them understand by looking into your eyes what you're really saying, you bring them in person,
mm-hmm,
right? You close the door and you say, "This is what's really going on." Now, could that leak? Sure, but that leak is never 100% positive or not. You
right,
don't know whether the people are even going to believe that the leak is true. And this goes back to what we were originally talking about. Netanyahu and Trump, they argue publicly all the time,
right,
right? But for some reason they always seem to get to the same point. But when they want to talk, they do so in person,
yeah,
right? Like Bibi will be summoned to the White House for no reason whatsoever, and immediately what everyone says is, "Oh, he's about to dress Netanyahu down. Why would Netanyahu be flying there?" And it's true. Like, why would he be flying there? They can just pick up the phone,
right,
right? Because when you have a recording of what's being talked about, if that leaks, then you can't say, "Oh, that was never said," or
mm-hmm,
that's being taken out of context. No one believes that kind of shit.
right,
But when you put someone in a room and say, "This is what's going on," then a plan is solidified, and then everything after it is just the fluff that sells it to the public.
right, right, right,
So, so Trump was one of the first people ever to recognize that in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that the ideal solution would be if the population of Gaza was sent elsewhere.
mm-hmm,
Right. Now, this is something that they talked about for years in Israeli circles, just never publicly. In fact, it was considered like you know how they arrest people for mean tweets in England?
mm-hmm,
Like if that was something, if you said that publicly enough in Israel, they would arrest you for it. That was considered incitement to
mm-hmm,
suggest that the Palestinians should be transferred anywhere. There was an American rabbi named Demir Kahana. He ran for the government over there. He made it in one year, and the next year they banned him. He was never able to run again
mm-hmm,
because that was what he suggested. He suggested that the population of Arabs should be transferred,
mm-hmm,
right? And so Trump saying this was a huge deal because now it was out in the public. Now, does he really want to transfer the population? I would think so for one reason only. In order for the population to stay in Gaza, yeah, and I know this is like it seems a bit disingenuous because I'll start out by saying I don't care what happens to them.
mm-hmm,
So, like,
right,
don't think this is coming from like my heartfelt desire to see good things happen to them.
right,
But if you do care about what's going on with the Palestinians, do you want almost 2 million people living in tents for the next 10, 15 years while they get all the rubble and unexploded ordnance and
mm-hmm,
everything that's left in Gaza? Like, there's nowhere for them to stay. There are
right,
no buildings left. Like, there's some, but not enough for the whole population.
right,
There's no infrastructure left. The tunnels that they bombed underneath everything have left everything in shambles.
mm-hmm,
So now it's a question of the minute they tell the Palestinians that they have a path to leave, they don't have to like round them up, put them on a boat, and say, "Hey, you're going to Sudan."
right,
Now they're just going to tell them, if you want to go somewhere else, just tell us where you want to go, and we'll pay for it. We'll give you
yeah,
a little check to take care of yourself.
right,
And a good portion of them are going to take advantage of that. Now, does that leave the Gazans in Gaza? Sure. It leaves plenty of them there. But they're not going to think twice about invading Israel again when they know that the other option is they can go somewhere else if they don't like what's going on there. I know
mm-hmm,
everyone likes to tie it to, oh, they're so in love with the land and they're going to take the land back. They've never been truly about that. They've been about defeating Israel. And a lesson has been learned from everyone right now that that's not going to happen. and it doesn't matter whether it's going to happen. What Trump has is a PR problem
Hmm.
in that he saw that Qatar and Europe were gaining the upper hand in that they were reaching out to everybody and causing all these student protests that were going on in colleges and this whole thing, like you said, with APAC and all of that. They were winning a PR war
Hmm.
that the other side wasn't going to fight because it's pointless. Okay, you can't fight a PR war when the other side is willing to just make up the facts.
Hmm.
You're just going to be constantly chasing your tail, and you saw that happening,
Hmm.
and that's why Britain and France were getting very emboldened to do whatever the hell they wanted in the Middle East and say whatever they wanted, and
Hmm.
try imposing new rules on the Middle East. Now that conversation has been shifted because Trump shifted it,
Hmm.
right? And
Now, how did
when
he?
you
Now,
saw
just to say, how did he shift it
I
specifically
was
so that everybody knows? Everybody knows.
So I was just about to say the biggest part of the conflict that was going to make sure the conflict never ended was that Hamas still held hostages. Okay.
Mm.
Israel was never going to stop until they either got those hostages back or confirmed that they were dead. And if they confirmed that they were dead, there was not going to be anything stopping them from doing whatever the hell they wanted.
Right.
They were not going to hear about it. Hamas had zero incentive whatsoever to give back those hostages. In fact, they were their only leverage,
Hmm.
right? Like they can want whatever they want, but without those hostages, they have no leverage whatsoever. So what Trump did was he changed the conversation. He said, I'm going to give you basically what you want. I'm going to give you the ceasefire. I'm going to let you guys run if you want to, and all that. And he put together a peace deal that was very on the surface level, it was very even-handed.
Hmm.
Okay. It was that it gave both sides what they want. But what you saw was Qatar and Turkey pushed so hard to get this done, it almost seems unnatural. Like,
Okay.
why would Qatar and Turkey be pushing so hard for something that they don't particularly care about? Right? Like, in fact, they probably benefit more from the chaos than they do from there
Of
being
course.
peace in the Middle East.
Of course.
So what they did was they took away the British and French argument that chaos is good. And
Hmm.
now you have the hostages are back, and Hamas is under the understanding that if they screw up at any point, if they start launching attacks, if they start screwing around and not disarming, it doesn't matter how much money Turkey or Qatar promises them. They're not going to have any respite. They're gonna be beaten into the ground and killed.
Hmm.
So now Trump has taken back the narrative. And that's why you're seeing people attacking Trump like everywhere they can about APAC and everything else now, because
Yes.
they don't have the argument anymore that, oh, this war is raging. Trump has no control. Netanyahu doesn't care. He controls Trump and he's doing whatever the hell he wants.
Right.
That argument doesn't really exist anymore. So now
Exactly.
they're trying to focus on all of these boogeymen that they placed around the world, like APAC, like, the Jewish lobby, like Hollywood, or whatever it is that they want to talk about that day, and they start pushing people like Nick Fuentes,
Hmm.
right? Why does that matter? Because Nick Fuentes is a unmarried teenager. Well, he's in his 20s now, but he's a nobody. And he knows he's a nobody. He doesn't actually appeal to anyone except for online trolls. Okay. So everyone's like, oh my God, Nick Fuentes has been on Tucker and they're doing this and they're doing that. And it shows that Nick Fuentes is ascendant. He's not. Trust me. When normal people find out about Nick Fuentes, the one thing they're positive of is they don't like him.
Hmm.
Okay. The only people that like him are people that have this cope that there's some kind of new right wing rising that's going to take over the world. And you know what? I don't fault them for thinking this because everybody goes through this,
Hmm.
right? Like that was how many times have you heard over the course of your life, oh, this new politician is finally going to figure out how to capture the young vote. They're going
Hmm.
to capture the next generation. And then what happens? They get slaughtered at the first election because young people don't vote. They
Hmm.
never have,
Right.
right? And there's no issue that's ever made them turn out that they actually care about. Even if they're very forceful about it in public and say, we're going to vote you out, we're going to do it, they never turn up. The numbers every single time show that young people don't vote,
Right.
right? That's why Bernie's not president,
Right.
right? Bernie
Right.
would have been president if young people actually turned up to vote because everyone's, oh, Bernie's galvanized the youth. They're gonna turn around and it's going to be like AOC in New York and the whole country's going to be Bernie Sanders type communist. Yeah, good luck with that.
Well,
right?
that's always a cheap Republican talking point to fundraise off of, right? Um, so going back to what you just said about Trump taking away the narrative about you know, the evil Israel versus the Gazans and all that, it's the same thing he did with Israel and Iran after bombing
Hmm.
Fort out. It's exactly the same thing. He took away Israel's casus belli as to why Iran is the great evil in the world that everybody has to, you know, has to orient their foreign policy against. It takes that side of the narrative away, and we can now move towards, you know, neutralizing Iran. The interesting
But
part
you know
about
what? It's
oh,
but
wait, wait. Okay,
back just real quick
one
about what
last thing
you're
I want
saying.
to okay, one last thing I
Okay.
want to say about this is that note the similarities between these two events, which is that
Hmm.
when the war started, no one came to Iran's defense. The Russians didn't, the Chinese didn't, no one did. Everybody said it was going to happen. The same thing happened to the Palestinians. When push came to shove, no one really came to the defense. Whether anybody should or they shouldn't have, that's up to you. That's between you and whatever God you worship or whatever ethos
Yep.
you know, morality that you purport to have. The reality on the ground is that it never happened. I had made this point to Alex Craner one day when we were on a podcast, and Alex was very much, you know, making a very cogent argument and emotional argument. I said, Alex, I'm not disagreeing with you morally or in any way, but here's the reality. No one came to the
Hmm.
Palestinians' defense. So what does that say about them geopolitically? Everything that I've always said, and you and I have always said together about the Palestinians, they've always just been somebody else's fucking pawn. And that's
Hmm.
the real tragedy of the entire situation. Go ahead.
Well, the Palestinians haven't always just been someone's pawn. The Palestinians are the same thing as what happened in Rhodesia, what happened in South Africa, what
Mm,
happened in Ireland. They were a tool of the Soviets, right? The Soviets practicing asymmetrical warfare would start these liberation groups and these anti-Western groups around the world and cause chaos until the allies of the US, such as the apartheid government of South Africa, the
right,
government of Rhodesia, the IRA in Ireland, all of the South American communist groups,
right,
right? They would start these quote unquote liberation movements. And then in 89, the curtain fell. And these liberation movements were in full swing, but now they didn't have to answer to the Soviet Union anymore.
mm,
Now they just were free floating. And they had been around for so long and had so infiltrated our general conversation that now they were full-fledged revolutionary movements that didn't just work to undermine the West in terms of Soviet influence. They just worked to undermine the West,
right.
right? So,
And they had fellow, and the Soviets had fellow travelers, and I'm sorry, City of London, Brussels, the High Table, whatever you want to
of
call them. It's
course,
just right. So
of course. So, but where is Trump's genius? And you mentioned this before with Iran, and it's so important that when you say it to people, they kind of go, "Well, duh, everyone knows that," but then they think about it and go, "Well, wait a minute, this is a much bigger deal than I thought." Trump understands the value of conspiracy theories because a conspiracy theory that's debunked gets so much traction that it's better than the original conspiracy theory. When Trump was going to attack Iran and when he did attack Iran for to end the 12-day war, the common conspiracy theory was this was a war that was been planned forever. It was going to turn into another forever war in the Middle East. We
mm,
were going to go for regime change, and this was going to bog down the U.S. military in terms of 20 years, $20 trillion,
mhm.
and it was all because Netanyahu manipulated Trump, and
Yep,
then he proved them all wrong, and they didn't know what to do,
yep,
right? So he keeps doing this. He does it over and over again, and he's going to keep doing it. Whenever they say, oh, well, Trump's just doing this because of X, right? Then he just proves them wrong and he takes all the steam out of their arguments. So right now, his current one is that he's in the pocket of Israel, yeah, that
mhm.
he'll do whatever Israel says. And he's showing them that it doesn't matter what Israel says, he's doing whatever is best for America.
Right,
If it happens to be in line with Israeli interests, that's good. But he's not thinking about Israeli interests per se. He's thinking about American interests. And the American interest is making sure that if there's going to be change in the Middle East, or there's going to be confrontation with Russia or China, it's going to be on his terms and not on anyone else's, especially Europe's.
especially Britain's
Right?
troops, which is
Right.
what's been so fascinating, right? It's been really
Hmm.
fascinating to watch him blossom into this perfect agent of chaos against the old British Empire. And,
Hmm.
you know, I didn't, you know, during his first term, I wasn't, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't, savvy enough to see that angle. But going back over uh, his record, even during his first term, it was clear what his original objectives were.
Hmm.
The other day, Susan Kokindo over Promethean Action played an excerpt from Trump's 2017 November 2017 speech at ASEAN and
Hmm.
at the ASEAN Summit, the Association of Southeast Asian Countries, ASEAN, ASEAN, and it was remarkable because it's exactly the same shit that he said at the UN a couple of months ago, and
Hmm.
you're like, okay, he's always understood the problem. He's always understood that that the British system of quote unquote globalism and free trade through central banking, property tax, debt based finance, and all of it, that is a that's their superpower.
Hmm.
And while Trump built a real estate empire based on that, notice how he's always reminding everybody exactly what he thinks real wealth is, which
Hmm.
is he puts gold plating on everything.
Yep.
We think it's
He creates a
cheesy,
ballroom out of the East Room.
right? And now
That's power.
right, that's power. And so, like at the end of the day, he's like, the whole point of all this is to accumulate real wealth. And in
Hmm.
that, and his image system is gold. And it's a very, very powerful image system when you stop to think of it. And that in and of itself debunks all of these other stupid narratives about him being vainglorious and egotistical and a narcissist and, creamsicle Hitler and all this bullshit. And like, none of that matters. That's not what he's doing. Go listen to his
Right.
speeches. Watch the man with a generous heart as opposed to one, frozen with the unquenchable grift and envy of Marxism. And all of a sudden, he looks like a completely different person than you think he is. If you look at all of this stuff, like the way his image system ultimately is telling you, look, I want, I know what real wealth is. I'm trying to show you what real wealth is. And so now
Hmm.
they're push. Now you'll notice, like I saw this the other day, the British are playing this card that Trump is mentally unstable. His mental decline is absolutely obvious at this point. When they get to the point where they're playing the mental decline card, they literally have nothing left, and he's got them over a barrel because they used to do the same thing to Putin. Putin's
Hmm.
autistic and all that stuff. So just fascinating.
So I think you're hitting on something that's really important to note for people, and I note this for all the time. And the more you see it, the more you understand it. When Trump first was elected in 2016, right? He had a vision of what power meant in the United States that was incorrect. Okay, is he thought that the people that he brought on to work with him were all united in the same kind of goal. And that even if they didn't, necessarily agree with him, that still the buck stopped with him. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You saw that that was completely shattered by people like Bolton,
Mm-hmm.
that people like uh I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, but they basically threw,
Pompeo, all of them.
yeah,
Yeah.
Pompeo, all of them. So what did they do? They didn't just come after him. They threw everybody that ever supported him in jail. They threw Flynn in jail. They
Mm-hmm.
threw Bannon in jail. Now, I don't like Flynn or Bannon at all. I think that they're unscrupulous grifters. But
Agreed.
at the same time, everything was a warning shot to Trump, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything was like, we can still get you. Don't rock the boat too hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was January 6th. The impeachments, I don't think were as big a deal as people made of them, right? Because it was obvious they weren't going to throw him out of office anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think the impeachments were as big a deal. They wasted time,
Mm-hmm.
which they accomplished that goal.
Right.
But it was January 6th that really changed everything for Trump because he realized that regardless of what happened, that they could spin a narrative that he wouldn't be able to counter.
Mm-hmm.
So what he's doing now is he understands the true value of power in that he's not bringing anybody in. He's not letting anybody into his inner circle that he doesn't want there in the first place.
Hmm.
He's giving massive autonomy to the people that he put in charge of certain things, like Bassett, like even Jerome Powell, who I know he has a problem with.
Hmm.
He's still like he comes out and says stuff about Jerome Powell and then never follows through with it. Oh, I'm going to
Exactly.
fire him, or so
It's all bullshit.
he's letting. And the best example I think of all of them is Marco Rubio,
Yep.
right? And Marco Rubio, remember, he's a Tea Party Republican. He's never been a tool of the system. Now, I know he's never also been a radical, and people look at that as if he's just a tool of the system. But he's not a radical. He never has been.
Hmm.
He understands what's right and wrong, though. So every time he finds a new snake in his circle, he fires them and then puts Rubio in charge of whatever they were in charge of first. You know,
Right.
like he's basically setting up that if things go as well as he's hoping, that it'll be a Vance Rubio ticket for 2028, or if Vance turns out to be a snake, which the jury's still out on,
Sure.
right? That Rubio will challenge him in the primary and win.
Right.
Okay, because Trump could put his support behind Rubio just as easily as he could Vance. I
Hmm.
mean,
Agreed.
look at the future of Mike Pence,
Right.
right? So, but now what you're seeing is Trump is running the show on the way a president is supposed to be honest with you.
Yes.
He's not supposed to be a Biden. He's not supposed to have this machine behind him that's really calling the shots, and he's the guy that goes out and puts a smile and a pretty bow on it,
Right.
right? Like he's not that person. So when what he is doing though is he's exposing all of the people along the lines that have kind of screwed him over,
Hmm.
whether by on purpose or not, like the Candace Owenses, like the Tucker
Hmm.
Carlsons, like all these people that smiled to his face and then stabbed him in the back.
Hmm.
Right now, what are all they doing? They're all down the London path themselves. They're
Right.
all taking money from Qatar. They're all owned by the different Arab oil interests. They're not making any sense to anybody.
No.
And their constant shrieking about all the bad things that are going to happen because of Trump never come true.
Hmm.
Okay. And when Charlie Kirk was assassinated,
Ooh.
right? This was a big deal because this was the time where people could all kind of come together and be like, okay, this shit is wrong. Like we're not supposed to see people getting their guts blown out on national TV. This is not the kind of stuff that we want to see our children to see,
Right.
right? And it didn't help that it was right after that. I always mispronounce her name, so I'm not even going to try. But the Ukrainian woman that got stabbed on the
Irina
train,
Zarutska.
that's
Irina
it.
Zarutska. Yeah.
Yeah, so I always pronounce it wrong.
Sure.
But honestly, I still can't get that video out of my head, and I've tried. Like, I want to forget it, and I can't,
I know.
right? Because every single person in the U.S. could see that that's their daughter,
Yep.
right? Like, she did nothing. There's not even like anything you can confuse that, like, oh, well, she had a bad political view. She was wearing a
Right.
"Make America Great Again" hat. Nothing. She was everyone's daughter and she got slaughtered on a train for no reason.
Right.
And then a couple days later, Charlie Kirk gets his guts blown out on national news, right? So at those times is when you have to be sober. It's when you have to understand what's going on and
Yes.
you have to seize the moment, right? It's why Bush became so popular after 9/11. Like there
Hmm.
are times where you can be an opinionated asshole and say whatever's coming to your mind. In fact, we want that most of the time.
Hmm.
There's certain times where you come together and you just say, "Wait a minute, this is not okay."
Right.
Right? And Trump he rose to the challenge in spades, and all of those people around him that have just been a complete joke and that have done what they could to manipulate the MAGA movement fell by the wayside because each one of them went into some crazy conspiracy theory about how Charlie Kirk was killed, that it was really Israel or it was really this or it was really that. And
Yep.
nobody wants to hear that stupid shit. They really don't. Like as much as social media likes to pretend that these things matter, the
Hmm.
people that say these kind of things are absolute losers,
Yeah.
right?
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
and Trump has shown that he's not one of them, which I think was everyone's biggest fear. Was Trump just a Twitter president
Right.
that believed all this nonsense and didn't stand for anything, or was he a real man? Was he a real leader? And
Hmm.
he's been showing over and over and over again he is a real leader.
Hmm.
Now, this puts us in a very perilous position
Agreed.
because now that people realize what they're facing in Trump, the ultimate Trump card could be coming, and that's that they can crash the economy.
Yeah.
Okay, because if they crash the economy, Trump gets nothing done. Remember, the midterms are next year,
Yep.
and there's a long time between now and then. That if the economy goes the way of the dodo, then Trump is going to suffer. He's already on path to suffer in the midterms to begin with,
Hmm.
because the party in opposition usually does well in the midterms because nobody
Right.
votes in the midterms. That's
Right.
why it was always, oh, the red wave is coming when Trump was president. It never came. The Democrats actually won.
Well,
It's because
I know,
old people
I
are
know that, but let's,
diehards.
but now, so let's now break. I would, before we go too far down that rabbit hole, because this is the Robert Barnes argument. This is, and who's one of these guys, literally, that has crashed out in a way that is scary. Like,
Right.
but I saw it coming because I
But
don't
he's
know,
Robert Barnes.
for whatever reason, I've been persona non grata with him for 3 years now, since the last time the day after I had him on my podcast the last time. Which is, I don't understand why, but hey, it is what it is. Now, but I have to name names every once in a while when you see it, because it's important, because you can see what exactly what you're talking about. Clearly, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens have now turned into, Candace is just like ridiculous, but
Yeah.
I mean, just ridiculous. The well, what's happening now for the midterms? This is why things like the redistricting plans and the voter ID stuff is also very important, because what happened in 2018 is not going to happen in 2026, if these things happen, because we're finding out now that our elections were not 1% corrupt. Our elections were 7 to 10% corrupt at a minimum.
Hmm.
And the older I get, the more I think about the systemic voting bullshit, the more I'm thinking that some of these elections are 30% inaccurate.
Hmm.
Okay. And so, because of that, everything we think we know about polling, demographics, midterm turnout, this, that, everything else, I think it's all nonsense, because I don't think any of this stuff is real. If if, for example, Emerald Robinson, who's, I find, Emerald is just, I find her just as crazy and as flaky as everybody else. But if she's correct, she's interesting one day and then she's flaky the next. She's correct that the only reason Trump is the president today is because, the guys in Serbia that were running the Dominion and Smartmatic servers said no to Davos, which is then dudes, like, to change all the freaking votes. Then if they had said yes, it'd be Harris and we'd be living in a different timeline. So everything we have to realize, this is how precarious the situation is. This is how deep the fucking the treason is. And this is why I have no fucking patience for fucking retards like Rand Paul and Thomas Massey and all the rest of them. I got no
Hmm.
patience for it. You're in a fucking war against pedophilic vampires that will do goddamn anything to stay in power.
Yep.
And you're going to sit here and argue about how many Rothbards can dance on the head of a fucking pin? Like, who
Hmm.
gives a shit about whether we violated the fucking civil rights of a bunch of fucking drug runners in the Gulf of America, you fucking retard? What the
Yep.
fuck is wrong with you? Like,
Well, this is the
serious.
fun part, though. This is the
Yep.
fun part. And it was funny because I just showed my kids this movie recently, and it's such a real thing for Trump. Have you ever seen Young Guns?
If I did, it was when it first came out. So, but go ahead.
So there was a line in it where Billy the Kid always tells people, he says, "I never stole a horse from somebody I didn't like." Right?
Right.
And then they joked, they said, "Yeah, then he'd just kill him if he didn't like him." Right? And Trump is the same person. Why? The people that Trump has gone at the hardest, little Marco Rubio, DeSantis, Abbott, Cruz, right? These are the people that Trump was. He basically said that Ted Cruz's father assassinated Kennedy, right? Like these are the people that he went at the hardest. And they're the people that are changing everything, right? Abbott with redistricting, Cruz with cutting property taxes and getting rid of property taxes.
No, that's
These are the
DeSantis.
big
That's DeSantis.
deals. DeSantis,
DeSantis.
I meant. I'm
Yeah, yeah.
sorry. But these Rubio running foreign policy in a way that's benefiting America tremendously. These are the people that he went after the hardest because he knew they'd be the hardest to beat because they're the best people we have. And to be honest with you, the fact that they were all able to put it behind them and work together after that with Trump, it
Hmm.
shows you that it was all they all knew it was just politics, it was smoke and
Hmm.
mirrors. But all of the people that everyone told him in his first term were the good people, the Boltons and the Pompeos and all of them, they were the snakes,
Hmm.
right? So what's he doing? He's got them all off doing the things that America wants to see. They want to see the Republicans have a pair of balls,
Hmm.
right? That's Abbott. That's Abbott redistricting in Texas. That's
Hmm.
Abbott allowing ICE to do what ICE needs to do and getting rid of the illegals. They
Hmm.
want to know that in foreign policy that we say something, we mean something. Rubio's doing that.
Right.
Right. And Rubio's doing exactly what needs to be done. What do we need to do at the state level? We need to encourage them to cut taxes because that's the important part. Because the federal government is never going to cut taxes in a way that's meaningful for America. It's necessary that the states are able to function the way they need to without constant government handouts. That's how you get the economy moving. He's
Hmm.
got DeSantis doing that in Florida, right? All of these people that typically the GOP hates, right? Like Ted Cruz barely wins his reelection bids.
Hmm.
DeSantis, while very popular in Florida, look at how well he did in the presidential primary. It
Right.
was a joke.
Right.
Abbott has been despised from the day he was elected. You
Hmm.
know, Rubio has run. Remember, he was Little Marco,
Hmm.
and he was never going to win the Republican primary ever. He
Right.
was just going to probably run in the Senate until either he died or someone more dynamic came out about him.
Hmm.
But Trump is letting them do what they need to do, and he's putting the ideas in their head about what needs to be done,
Hmm.
right? And they're doing it, and
Yeah.
it's popular. The stuff they're doing is very, very popular.
I
You
can say,
know,
I can think, put even more color on what's going on with DeSantis, right, in Florida, because of course, Floridian. What I can tell you that's happening, and DeSantis is calling this out directly. He's calling out the traitorous Florida GOP, the uniparty that we have in Florida. Like I
hmm
remember, I've said that, I told the story before. I'll tell it again to remind everybody that I remember when DeSantis was first like beginning to kick ass as Florida governor. And I said to Dexter White, yeah, but you know, we all know that the Florida governorship, it doesn't have a whole lot of power. All the powers in the legislature. And he just looked at me and he went, dude, I've been a Floridian most of my freaking life. I've watched Republican governors come and go and get not 1/10 the amount done that this guy's gotten done in the first freaking 6 months in office. Something has changed. He's a
hmm
different guy. And you have to like, and I'm like, okay, fair enough. And then since then, you're watching how he's played the game, and now he's calling out the Florida GOP who are trying to water down the abolition of property taxes for primary homeowners by putting 5 different things on the ballot in order to confuse the issue. This is a
hmm
very typical City of London Davos bullshit. Like let's split everything up and make everybody go crazy when it should be one clean three line you know thing. Abolition of property taxes for everybody who currently claims a homestead exemption in the state of Florida. Done. That's
Yep.
it. Yes or no? Yeah. And everybody's gonna,
Uh-huh.
everybody's gonna vote for it. If it's that, everybody votes for it. And they
It's
know
not
that
only
people are,
that.
yeah,
It's not only that, and this is why what's going on right now is so important. You've got this guy Mondani running in New York,
right.
right? And I think he's gonna win. Even if he doesn't, the threat that he could have won is there, but I think he's gonna win anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if he wins, the number one destination will be Florida by far.
Absolutely.
Uh, there's even talk of the stock market moving out of New York,
Yes.
right? Because even if they're not so afraid of Mamdani, what they're afraid of is his taxes.
Yeah.
Okay. And because he's not going to be able to do any of this destructive shit he wants to do without raising city taxes. And he
Right.
will, right? So every person of wealth, every business of wealth has basically two choices of where to go, Florida or Texas. And
Mm-hmm.
they're not all going to go to Texas. It's too
Nope.
spread out. It doesn't have the infrastructure, and Houston and Dallas are more liberal than anything on earth.
Right.
So they're going to go to Florida,
Yeah.
right? And DeSantis is really setting them up for it.
Yeah, no, he
Really.
is. And remember when Trump's first attack on Mondami was straight up. He's like, look, New York Stock Exchange. If you guys allow this guy to be fucking elected, I'm going to IPO Fannie and Freddie in Dallas. Fuck
Yep.
you. That was the biggest fuck you to Wall Street I've ever seen in my life. And the best part about it was that Jamie Dimon over at JP Morgan the next day was like, and JP Morgan, we're gonna invest $1.5 trillion of our money into the US economy directly.
Yep.
We're not like in infrastructure stuff. And I'm like, yeah, tell me that these guys aren't coordinating fucking talking points now. Like it absolutely. And then yesterday,
Go a step further.
yeah,
Go a step
so
further. Elon moved his entire industrial base basically to Texas, right?
yep, yes.
Texas is positioning itself to become the manufacturing hub of the US.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, what does Texas also have that no one else does? A very, very, very wide border with Mexico. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to piss off America, start bringing in trillions of Indians on H-1B visas. You want to make Americans not even notice that foreigners are working at all. Bring them in on temporary worker visas where they go home after a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Then they can go right in and out. And you would never even notice it because they're not going to other parts of the country. They're just going to Texas. And
Mm-hmm.
Texas is fine with that. They've always been fine with it. Right?
Right.
Like pretty much every farmhand, every beef worker, every you know
Right.
every manual labor in Texas is an illegal Mexican. So as of right now, you secure the border, which there's been basically no border crossing since Trump took office.
Right.
Okay, with the border being secure, you institute a temporary worker visa from Texas, which he's been working on and talking about. Just for some reason, no one's mentioning it. Right, like you can find it on page 7, but you can't find it on page 1. And Florida becomes the Silicon Valley of the country. Right,
Mm-hmm.
all the wealth from the Northeast and the West is moving to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And DeSantis has done nothing but encourage them to do it by getting rid
Yeah.
of property taxes, school choice. You're
Yes.
going to make private
Yes.
school cheaper for people that make over $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
Whoa, sign me up. Like he's
Exactly.
he's encouraging everyone
Yeah.
to bring their businesses.
And if anything, you're looking at it, and what's interesting, actually, it's a decentralization play as well, because actually, right wing media is centered in centered in the long triangle of West Palm, Broward, and Miami-Dade. Okay,
Right.
and the manufacturing is in and whatnot is in Texas and Arizona.
Right.
Right, that's where Silicon. That's where Taiwan is. Arizona is the new Taiwan. Right,
Hmm.
Texas is the new manufacturing hub, along with other places. And then how about the big one yesterday? He comes out and he says, "Yeah, I just spoke with the South Koreans, and their shipbuilding companies are going to come to Philadelphia and start
Yep.
making fucking ships in Philadelphia. How to turn a purple state red? Give them,
Yep.
my friend Vince Lanci tweeted this out this morning. Give them shipbuilding jobs. Like it's so obvious. And I mean, Halsey, when we were babes in the woods doing this shit back in 2017, and I looked at the Trump tax cut. I looked at it and I went, oh, and the salt deduction. I went, this is the biggest piece of political legislation I've seen since FDR's New Deal. Somewhere in purgatory, FDR is looking up, going, "Well done, Donald. Well done."
Yep. Touche. Exactly. And it's funny when you take Trump because again, if you just look at what he finds important, right?
Mhm.
They've always been able to portray it as he's very petty, right?
Right.
Like he takes cheap shots and he doesn't care. But when he went after Newsom, right? What was the thing he went after him about? He diverts the rivers right into the ocean to save this stupid insignificant fish. That's what he
Right.
tweeted out,
Right.
right? That people don't realize what a huge deal that actually was. But I'll tell you what, they do now because they've been diverting the Colorado River for a long time into California to supply water to Nestle and to the pistachio growers. Why are you growing pistachios, one of the most water-heavy plants, off of an area that's been in endless drought for centuries,
Yes.
right? And it was always being
And
swept
then
under the rug.
and starving Arizona and Nevada and everybody else south of southern, on the southern half of the Colorado River of that water. When at the same time, if we end all of this bullshit in the Middle East, this will make Dexter White
Hmm.
happy. We can lift the sanctions on Iran, and everybody can find out just how good Iranian pistachios actually are because it's just better than everybody else's.
Well, and this is the funny part about what you're saying too, and I'm going to get shit from for saying this, but um, Iran has never been a true enemy of the West. Okay.
Right.
The theocratic government in Iran has always been a tool of London. That's why the
Hmm.
Ayatollah, when he ran from Iran, he went to France.
Hmm.
When he arrived back in Iran in 79, he arrived on an Air France jet,
Hmm.
right? Like they're always been a tool of chaos for Europe.
Yes.
And pacifying them has always been what it's been. But right now, Europe is losing their grip on even that.
Yes.
And I think the only reason they stopped the war when they did in Tehran was because they understood that Iran was probably just either going to collapse in and on itself, or they
Hmm.
were just going to become another third world shithole that nobody cares about.
Well, yeah, well,
They're
yeah, while that was going on, I kept saying the same thing. Everybody was like, "Well, we all know that Israel's a tool of the city of London." And I'm like, "Yeah, why do you believe that there aren't factions in Iran that are not also tools of the city of London, and that this is red ants and black ants and Alex Craner's ant jar getting shaken up in order for all of us to worry about whether or not we're going to get fucking nuked?" When the
I
reality is
just
that,
said this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
and
just
it's all
said this the
bullshit.
other day. I said, have you ever seen the movie Lord of War? Phenomenal movie if you haven't seen it with Nicolas
Right.
Cage. He's an arms
Hmm.
dealer.
Right.
So at one point he's at an arms convention and he goes and he meets like the grand poobah of arms dealing.
Hmm.
And the guy goes, I don't think we could do business. And he said, why? And he goes, you sell guns, I take sides. And he goes, but during the Iraq war, you sold guns to both. And he said, you ever thought I want both to lose? You know, that's right now what they're doing with Iran and Israel and Trump. They don't want this endless war.
Right.
And trust me, no one wants that more than Israel. I know everyone thinks that Israel benefits from all these wars. They don't.
No, no,
Like not even in the slightest.
no one
Okay, they're
benefits from
in
these wars.
right, but if you see the levels of PTSD that came home from Iraq and Afghanistan,
Right.
right? And we barely did anything there. Like our guys were not frontline fighting most of the time. They were doing police actions. Our death counts were in the thousands, not in the tens of thousands.
Right.
These were not large scale wars, and they fucked up our troops bad. How do you think a country of 7 million Jews is feeling after literally almost a decade of, I mean, a century of war?
Hmm.
Like they benefit from quiet. They want this to stop. And being able the go ahead to take out the Iranian nuclear program and the guarantee that America would make sure that it doesn't actually happen again on their watch was more than enough that whatever's got to happen is going to happen at this point.
Hmm.
And you're seeing again a reorganization of the Middle East. Like the worst thing that can happen to the Ayatollahs right now is to open up real trade with the West. And they're
Hmm.
going to have to because Russia and China can't keep it up. They can keep China can keep buying their oil,
Right.
and that's fine. But they don't have any water. They
Right.
don't have any tech. They have nothing,
Right.
right? Like just getting money doesn't help. They need to
Hmm.
have some level of infrastructure. They need to have some level of stability,
Hmm.
which the Ayatollahs have not provided.
Right.
So
Right.
is
And
Iran
it's a
still a problem? Sure, but
but
not like
the
it was.
right, but and that's what's interesting about this. You bring in Russia and China and Iran, and obviously, well, everybody is like continuing to talk about BRICS and this and everything. The BRICS is irrelevant. Like the G,
Hmm.
like this morning, Besson just tweeted out that unilaterally the Chinese came to the United States and expressed interest in the Alaskan friggin' oil pipeline, the railway and pipeline. Like they want this. They know they're going to need the oil coming out of Alaska. They know they need to open up the Arctic, and everybody knows that arc is the real future. America, Russia, China. And that's what Iran has always. That's what all of these little forever war conflicts, Cambodia, Thailand, all the border wars in the forever wars in Central Africa, stopping the rare earths and the cobalt and the this and the lithium and all the things that we need. Israel, Israel, Gaza, to Nagorno Karabakh, Turkey, and everybody. Even the fucking PKK just went home out of Turkey.
Hmm.
Okay, like all of these conflicts, all of these, it's insane. Now, the only like common denominator that's still going on in all of those conflicts is that Christians are getting fucking slaughtered all over the freaking place, and and it's happening everywhere. and it's and it's non-denominational, and it's and it's everybody fucking doing it, and it's bullshit. And it's most and this is what has to end. And then on top of everything else, we have the goddamned Indians and the goddamn Turks continuing to play this fucking two-faced game while they send their shit all around the goddamn world, and then demand that we all accept it or we're racist. How about no? I don't give a
Hmm.
shit. Go home.
Yep.
Go
Well, there's
home.
something Trump did with China that, and this is going to be very unpopular, but I still say it all the time and I don't care.
Mhm.
Trump let China know a fundamental truth that no one believes, and that's that China's not our enemy. They've never been our
Yes.
enemy.
No.
And I know people love to talk about the CCP doing all this evil shit, and have they been fighting a traditional war with us, which every country does to each other? Did they spy on us? Did they steal our design? Sure,
Of course.
right? Just like every other country has done over the course of history. We either give them to them or they steal them.
Mhm.
That's been hands down no matter what. But China has never been able to sleep at night knowing that the vast majority of Americans don't see them as an enemy, right? So now what Trump has done and what is continuing to do, and he's doing it well, he's convincing people what I've been saying for a long time. They're not our enemy, they're a competitor,
Sure.
right? So what do you do to the competition? You don't beat them down, right? If you beat them down and take them over, then all you're going to do is create a behemoth that's not able to be controlled anymore, that has
Mhm.
competing interests, that isn't going to benefit anyone. What
Right.
do? You work with them.
Right.
There's a reason why both Costco and Sam's Clubs both do so well, right? Because
Mhm.
they understand what real competition is because they're not really in competition. They both sell the same crap for the
Mhm.
same price, for the same memberships, and make billions for the owners of Costco and for Walmart and in return for the government,
Mhm.
right? China's the same thing. Okay. China just needed to get it through its head that we weren't at war with them. We don't see them as an enemy, which Trump has done brilliantly,
Mhm.
right? So when you're
But
not at war
and
with someone,
he's done this by neutralizing the British backed neoconservative or Euro trash. So now you can watch the Chinese poke the Europeans when the Europeans try to impose their will on the Chinese. Nexperia, for example, the Chinese just hit right back, and now everybody's in trouble, and the whole car
mhm,
industry is now everybody's like reeling about the car industry. To your point um about going, I want to go back because you're right about all of that. So I don't think we need to belabor that point, but it's because it's obviously true at this point. Um, the 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 worry for the midterms, going back to the one thread we didn't really finish because I hijacked it and moved on to something else, and I want to go back to it, which is um their attempt to attack the economy. And we're watching it
mhm.
have play out right here, right now with the shutdown. Everybody's like, this doesn't make any political sense. The Democrats are immolating themselves on this thing. Like, yeah, they are. They don't
Hmm.
care. They're in burn it
No.
down mode at this moment. They're in vandal mode.
Hmm.
And that's what you have to get your mind around that. And that's why ultimately you just have to give Trump a very wide berth to clean all this shit up. And
Right.
they're moving up the escalatory ladder. I can see it in New York, Illinois, um, California, and whatnot. They're moving up the escalatory ladder where Trump is going to have to arrest the sitting civilian state governors. He's
Could
going
be.
to have to arrest them. They're trying to push him into the Lincoln scenario, while at the same time they call him King George. Like
You
they're
see, I
doing
don't
both of
necessarily agree with you on that.
them. Okay,
Okay. The difference being is this, is that in the 60s, you had race riots all over the place, right?
sure.
And in the 60s, there were some states that let the black neighborhoods burn themselves to the ground. And then they've spent years trying to rebuild them in some way and just cost billions of dollars in welfare and all of that. And some were just like, hey, if they're going to burn down their own neighborhoods, let them burn down their own neighborhoods,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what you're seeing is the end result of that now, in that for years, the Democrats were always able to command the black vote because they always promised them, we're going to rebuild, we're going to give you the welfare, it's not your fault, it's all the racist fault, right? And their neighborhoods stayed worse and worse and worse and worse. They never got better,
Right.
right? Trump is not necessarily making them better. He's letting them know that the Democrats aren't either. And that the Democrats, when they burn it down, they never rebuild it. They're just doing it to stoke anger, right? So that's why this shutdown is so different. Like, if you'll notice, every other shutdown, they blame the Republicans, whether they were in power or not. They said this is the Republicans' fault that we're shutting this
Right.
down. They're doing it now,
Mm-hmm.
but no one's buying it
Right.
because Trump's just saying, all I'm saying is open the government. I'll talk to you about whatever you want. And they're like, nope, we want guarantees of this, of that, of this, of that. You'll give us more, like basically all the welfare programs that they want. They're telling Trump that they won't open the government until he funds. And he says, no, we'll talk about those things individually, but we're not going to let them be put into a shutdown argument that has nothing to do. We'll just keep it shut down.
Right.
You know?
This is a replay of Pelosi and the big beautiful bill, the infrastructure bill, and the debt ceiling. She forced everybody to tie those three votes, which could have all been handled separately. She tied them all
Right.
together because she wanted the whole package, and she lost because Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema had Wall Street standing behind them, going, "Yeah, you're voting against this."
Right.
I
Exactly.
call remember I called all that back. You and I covered all this stuff back then, and and it's the same thing. Why are they doing this? Why are they tying all these things together? It doesn't make any sense. You have a better chance of getting some of what you want if you actually just negotiate. They don't want to, because the point of the exercise is to they voted against extending SNAP benefits while the government was shut down, and then are blaming Trump for starving Americans.
Yep. And guess what? No one's buying it.
No one's buying it.
Yeah, because they can open the government whenever they want.
Right.
And Trump's made that clear. They can feel free to open the government whenever they
Right.
want, but he's not going to play this game.
Right.
He's not going to, and it's a microcosm of what's going on around the world.
Mm-hmm.
He's telling the Democrats, he's telling Davos, he's telling London, you can create as much chaos as you want. All you're doing is creating chaos. Enjoy the chaos,
Yeah.
because I don't get burned down by the chaos. You do.
Right.
So it doesn't matter, because if I come out and say I'm not going to play this game, you can make every excuse in the book that you want. Like, you've created this. You've created this conspiratorial mindset amongst people. So I'm not letting it have any power over me anymore. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can go out and try to win a media victory all you want. I'm fine with it, because guess what? The government's still not open.
Right.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And what you're going to find is that with the government not being open, whenever they do decide to reopen the government, which for all I know could be after the next year's midterms, I have no idea,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whenever they do, I guarantee you that it's going to be on Trump's terms,
Mm-hmm.
you
I agree.
know?
I agree. And what's interesting is, like, and this is where the people within supposedly the MAGA movement that are all crashing out now, they're all screaming like, yeah, but they haven't cut government spending. They haven't done this. They haven't done that. I'm like, dudes, like, we lived off of fiscal year 2025's numbers all the way
Hmm.
up until 2020, up until October 1st, when fiscal year 2026 was supposed to start. We haven't even seen what fiscal year 2026 looks like. Why? Because they shut the fucking government down so that we couldn't see what fiscal year 2026 was going to look like. Don't you fucking get it, you goddamned retard? This is like everything else. They never want to go to discovery. They just
Hmm.
want to screech and have a lawsuit, and then write headlines about the lawsuit. But the minute hey, let's go to discovery. Never mind, let's settle. And
Right.
that's where we are right now with the shutdown. It's the same goddamn thing. And now they're trapped, and all they can do is and they're being told, continue to burn it down, because we're getting to a moment where there's going to be a financial trigger. And you've been seeing the beginnings of this, and we're doing this on October 30th. And for the last week and a half or so, there's been all this talk about seizures in the credit markets, SOFR blowing out above IOER. Powell doesn't know what he's doing. It's all this stuff, and I'm watching the SOFR futures market, and ain't nothing happening. So clearly,
Yep.
somebody's pressing on the scenario, pressing on things. Andrew Bailey at the BOE comes out and says, I think there's going to be a really bad credit crisis in the United States. I'm like, why? Because you're going to create one, you fucking slovenly, limey prick? I wonder. Same thing
Hmm.
with Mark Carney. Same thing with all of these pricks. They're going to try this. And Powell just said the other day, yeah, we're ending QT. And frankly, if he has to start QE to restart QE to stop these motherfuckers from crashing our fucking bond markets, well, guess what? Libertarians, it's what's going to happen next. because it's a
Yep.
war, and you have to think in terms of how you use the war to your advantage. So what did Powell do yesterday? Most brilliant thing I could have asked for, because weeks I've been saying, hey man, if I have a if I have a if I have a criticism of Powell, I've been Powell's biggest fucking cocknobber for the last 3 years, has been he he gives, he's too nice to the markets. He holds their hand way too much. And then yesterday he cut interest rates and said, you know what, I might be done.
Yeah.
And which
Yep.
was, he's going to cut in December. Like, clearly he's going to cut in December, but he's leaving the markets with some strategic ambiguity. Powell starting to take on the Trump game, because now he can do so. Because now he's at a point
Hmm.
in those last 4 or 5 months for him to do what he needs to do. What do you
Yep.
think?
Well, he's also it's funny because like you have two huge things I want to talk about, but I'll start with Powell.
Sure.
Okay. So in order for Trump to succeed, he needs to smoke out the enemies and show the world who the enemies are. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
With Powell, what he's doing right now is he's showing that the enemy is BlackRock.
Yes.
Okay. Because if they go back to QE, like pure QE, where interest rates drop to like 2% again,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the housing market lights on fire, BlackRock gains without having to manipulate the system at all.
Right.
Okay. Because there won't be enough
Oh,
housing.
oh, right. Wow, dude. Yes, absolutely. Go for it.
So then everyone will be buying. There won't be enough inventory, and the prices go up naturally,
Mm-hmm.
which nobody wants. Okay. But if you keep interest rates around where they are right now, and the property market stays about where it is right now, and he keeps deporting the way he's deporting, if jobs keep improving, which they are, and if the economy keeps doing what the economy's doing, the fact that BlackRock is buying properties all over the country and then selling them at a manipulated rate in order to raise property taxes and get people, priced out of their own homes,
Mm-hmm.
right? No one's going to believe you. It sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. But if you just drop interest rates a little bit and get people looking for houses and they realize that there's not enough inventory, what do? You hypercharge the construction industry, which
Yeah.
is exactly what he wants to do. He's
Right.
been trying forever to build more. He wants to build more. Why are we not building more houses? Why are we
Mm,
just arguing about the price of existing homes?
right.
And nobody's willing to answer honestly and say, because we did this by design. We
Mm-hmm.
want people's property values to explode because then people always think that buying a house is the greatest investment ever. Well, we found out what happens with that in 2008.
Right.
Okay. So what do? We need more houses. And guess what?
And
We need property values to drop. That's fine.
or or
You
or
know?
or even admit, we just need, what we actually need is to change the supply of what starter homes look like. Because the average starter home, I was doing this work the other day. The average starter home in the United States is $260,000, which is way
Yep.
more than a 22-year-old couple's potential three x income. Right?
Yep.
So they have to make almost 90 grand between the two of them at 22 years old, not in this environment. They're more like looking at, 68 to 70 between the two of them, right? Right around 30
Hmm.
grand, maybe 32 grand each times three, 200, 210 maybe, right? So the point is, there's a couple of things going on here. And I've looked at a lot of these things, but that house was built in 1969. It's probably
Hmm.
a small 3-2 bungalow, like my first house was in north side of Gainesville, 13 to 1400 square feet on a third of an acre. And it was, my
Hmm.
house was built in 55, but that was 30 years ago. They're buying a nearly 60-year-old house. I'm 58. I'm going to be 58 in February. You're buying a 57-year-old house, which has got a lot of work that's got to be done on it. And this is supposed to be your starter home. Like,
Right.
I have to kill myself for a 55-year-old fixer upper. Fuck off. Like,
Hmm.
no, that's not wealth generation. That's a
Right.
depreciate. That's a continuing depreciating asset, and and you want me to pay 6% for that? No.
Hmm.
But these are the houses. But the Biden administration sold through FHA tens of thousands of houses to fucking H1Bs here in the fucking America that priced our kids out of our freaking homes, and they're all on FHA mortgages. Now, you want to know what the fun part about that is? Ready? How did I get my first house, Halsey? Do you know? I don't think I've ever told you
No.
this story. You know how I
No.
got it? I got it through a reference from a friend of mine who said, "Oh, you're looking for a house?" Because we were getting thrown out of the house we were renting. You know. and it's just we were at the end of a contract, right? We were on the end of a lease, and we were at 14 months on a 12-month lease, and then the owner said, "Get out. You got 30 days." Fine. We had to find a house. What happened? A friend of mine said, "Oh, you're looking for a house? Well, I know a friend of mine has got a house over on the north side of Gainesville. It's an FHA loan. He just needs somebody to assume it."
Hmm.
FHA mortgages for single family homes are assumable.
Yep.
So all of these mortgages on all of these houses that were probably sold starter homes at 175, 180 grand 3, 4 years
Hmm.
ago are all going to come on the market when we send all these fucking people back to India or
Yep.
wherever. Okay, or Somalia, or wherever the fuck we put these people, wherever we sold these people. And those houses are going to be in the hands of Bill Pulte at Fannie and Freddie after it goes public. We're going to rewrite all the friggin' terms because they can suspend Dodd-Frank because Fannie and Freddie are private organization after they've been
Hmm.
IPO'd. They come out of conservatorship and they can redo all of it and they can hand those homes that 3 years, the 3 years and the 3.5% that they put down paid off on that loan. That's $150,000 house.
Yep.
Now at 150 grand, not at 260 or 225. Now that house is worth something to those kids starting out. Now you can start recapitalizing the middle class,
Hmm.
and you can start building starter homes because the
You're
price of
also
lumber
missing the
crashed
you're
in this
missing
country.
the tie-in that I made. I
Okay,
was wondering if you're going to pick up on the tie-in that I made. When you're talking about what BlackRock's doing,
yes.
right? BlackRock is doing this in New York. BlackRock is doing this in New Jersey. BlackRock is doing this in California.
Oh,
BlackRock is doing this in all of the places with ridiculous property rates that make construction irrelevant.
yes.
Where is all the building going to come? In the places that are cutting property taxes, that are
Mm-hmm.
cutting corporate taxes, that
Mm-hmm.
have no income taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Where's all the building going to go? To the states where all the jobs are,
Yep.
which are Florida, Arizona, and Texas.
And to a lesser extent, places like Alabama and Arkansas
Sure.
and South Georgia and all of that stuff. And by the way, where all the timberland is.
And want me to say something really offensive but really true? It's
Sure.
where all the black people are too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Remember, it's not the black people that are suffering around the country because there aren't that many black people around the country. The vast majority of them are in the South,
Yes, they are.
right? They're the ones wanting jobs. They're the
Yeah.
ones wanting to buy houses. They're also not the ones burning down their cities because of
Nope.
some perceived welfare grievance.
Yep.
Okay. Like I went to college in the South. I went to the University of Alabama. There was never a problem between white and black people down there that wasn't like some superficial, stupid nonsense, right?
I've lived amongst these people for 38 years and 39 years in Gainesville. I've lived next door to them for 22 years in Southern Columbia County. Like I know exactly what you're talking about. These are some of the nicest, most these are you and me with different skin color, and they're good people, good church going. They still have their Sunday go to meeting clothes, for Christ's sake. We don't. We're all a bunch of slovenly fucking white trash.
But you know what else they've never been? Coddled.
No.
That's the big deal, is
Yep.
that when they go to college, they work in high school, they work in college, they
Mhm.
graduate with decent degrees, they get good jobs. Like poverty is still a thing in their community. It's probably going to be for a long time. It's very hard for a community to work itself out of poverty.
Mhm.
But they're not the ones burning down their own cities because they're not getting a welfare check, right? They're the ones who are buying the houses. They're the ones who care about property taxes. They care
Mhm.
about these things. There's a reason why Republicans win in states that have huge black populations. Okay, it's not just because they redistrict and gerrymander the blacks out. They don't do that at all. In fact, they
Nope.
until recently they weren't even able to do that because of the civil rights era laws,
Mhm.
right? It's because the vast majority of people in the South are not like northern inner city people,
Mhm.
right? They're not infested with crime. They're not infested with illiteracy. They're not infested with this gimme, gimme, gimme attitude that stops them from ever learning how to read and write. So when you're talking about the South becoming the new central hub, like south of the United States, I'm not talking about just the Southeast, right? You're talking about groups that are going to be voting Republican for the next 100 years if this works out the way that it's heading, right? And it comes back to the argument that it's funny because it's been such a joke for so many years. People are like, "Oh, well, how did the Republicans ever beat the Democrats?" The Democrats just say, here's all the welfare that you want. The Republicans say, hey, go get a job. You know what I'm saying? Well,
Mm,
guess what? Hey, go get a job is how you get people on their feet. It's how you give people pride and dignity.
mhm,
And that's what matters in this world. Okay, is that you feel a sense of accomplishment. Like if you told your kids do whatever you want, they're going to be eating ketchup packets and soda until for breakfast every morning for the next 10 years. If
mhm,
you say no, they might not like you at the moment, but guess what? They're going to grow up to be good people,
mhm,
right? In the South, there have been racial problems. Obviously, I'd be stupid to deny that there
mhm,
weren't. But as of now, you have states and you have areas where the legitimate interest of the state is in helping everybody in the state.
mhm.
And it's going over and over and over again. And as I said, the play that's been done by corporate America and the Democrats is not working.
Right.
And Trump is turning it on them, right?
Mhm,
Because now BlackRock is going to be left with all of these properties in the Northeast that they can't do anything with,
mhm.
right? Because the only people that can buy them are people that don't want to live there anymore. Why would you want to live in a crime-infested, expensive shithole if there's not even any centers of finance or there's not any centers of industry,
Or
right?
political power or
And
anything else. Right.
right, like, do you think anyone cares what the governor of New Jersey says anymore? Most
Right.
people don't even know who he is, and we're one of the most expensive states in the country.
Mhm.
But oh, and we're about to elect a Republican, I think. Um,
Would be interesting. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's a very, very good point. And I reiterate to people all the time that BlackRock itself is not a very big company.
no.
BlackRock controls through your 401ks a tremendous amount
Hmm.
of assets under management, and a they have a lot of political power by being able to appoint board members and everything else. But it's all shadow power. It's not real power. Real
Hmm.
power is they have $55 billion net equity on their balance sheet or whatever the hell it is this quarter. It's not a lot. It's growing, but a lot of that is also housing. Okay.
Hmm.
And so, because they've been making strategic investments, as you said, not just BlackRock, but Blackstone, State Street, Vanguard, they're all doing it. And they
Yep.
were all and they're now in serious trouble if this is where they are now. They've been doing the same thing in the burb claves in places all around Florida. What's interesting, what's happening in Florida, and everybody, you will hear the headlines all the time. Property values in Florida are crashing, blah 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 blah. Yeah, what's happening is they were so retarded, and now the marginal buyer is not coming in. The marginal seller is getting less than they thought they were going to get. But they're all that's happening is that the prices are just rolling north, exactly as I said that they would, because I've been living in the state for 40 years and I know how it works. So I'm in North Florida. We're the next ring to get paid, if for lack of a
Hmm.
better term. And you can see it. It's happening everywhere. I can see the construction. I can see the way it's working. South Florida is full, and it's time for North Central Florida and the Panhandle and everything like west of Jacksonville and all through South Georgia. That's all going to grow. It's all relatively inhospitable to live in, but it's going to grow because it can't
Hmm.
not grow. And people will figure out how to make it hospitable, especially when they can buy a 1,500 square foot brick bungalow or Ocala block bungalow on 5 acres for 200 grand. And
Hmm.
Starlink gives them internet access. That's decent.
That's the big deal. The that
Like all
the
of a sudden,
Starlink thing
boom,
is a
everything
huge
changes.
deal.
Starlink changes everything, and then Starlink phone access, forget it. Everything changes. Everything changes. So, all right, my friend, this has been phenomenal. I think we should cut it off here. I usually don't like to go over 90 minutes on these, but we'll do this
Sure.
again. I'll be happy to go. We'll happy to do this again on your show or whatever. But do me this distinct and great pleasure of telling everybody where they can find you now and how they can give you support because my God, man, you deserve it. So go for it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You can find me on Twitter at Real Halsey E, or you can find me on YouTube or Patreon at Halsey English. I'm constantly putting out content. I'm constantly putting out analysis. I got a newsletter that comes out twice a week at this point. We're working really hard to produce the things that you guys want to see and want to hear. So give us a follow and some support. You'll be more than happy with what you get.
Thank you, my friend. And as always, I'm TFL 1728 on Twitter, where the worst part version of me will probably show up on a daily basis.
Good.
Patreon/Gold Goats and Guns, and you guys know the drill. Keep your stick on the ice.